Okay. All right. So I will get this started. I wanted to thank everybody for hopping on today. I know everybody's incredibly busy right now. And as a heads up, I think we're going to put a little halt on webinars for a little while just to give everybody time to actually be working in your bike shops. So we know that nobody really had a winter and things have just been insanely busy. So we definitely appreciate you taking the time to join today. We're going to be going over the Bike Co-op's Keep It Rolling Protection Plan. The agenda for today, we're going to do some introductions, and then I'm going to do a brief overview of the program, and then we're going to hear from the guys at Spokes, Etc. And then we're going to do a little bit of Q&A that I have, and then also addressing some common pushback. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A to everybody on the webinar. And if you have questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the chat, and we'll make sure to address them at the end if they haven't already been addressed. So I am Lacey Wynn. I am the membership manager of the Bike Cooperative. If you're on this webinar, you very likely had many conversations with me at this point. We also have Matt Seitz, who's our head of recruitment with the Bike Cooperative. He's worked with us for a long time as well. And then we have the guys at Spokes, Etc., who are our inaugural 2020 Retailer of the Year, which is very awesome. Congratulations to them. So we have Steve Beeler, VP of Operations. We have Garrett, also the service manager, and Roberto, who is another sales manager. So a quick overview of KPP. We've offered KPP since about 2005. Currently, the underwriter is a company called Aminta/Guardsman. They have kind of two names at this point, but they've been the underwriter for a long time. We have incredibly competitive pricing compared to a lot of the other programs out there. And one of the biggest benefits is that you're able to choose that pricing to offer what you present to your customers. In 2020, we only had 7 participating retailers, meaning there were only 7 retailers that sold KPP, but they sold over 1,900 plans and made over $181,000 in pure profit just from selling the plans alone. That's not counting dollars brought in from service repair, which is obviously a huge amount of money. This is just a quick slide of what it covers. I'm not going to go into the details of this, obviously, and this will be available in a dealer manual, and you'll also be able to see it on the presentation afterwards. But this is just a very basic overview of what it covers, and this is actually something I pulled right from Spokes' website, so this looks familiar to you guys. We have a new pricing structure as well that breaks it down into a lot of different tiers. So for your bread and butter bikes, it's incredibly good pricing for 3 and 5 year pricing. And then we put the tiers all the way up to 15 grand. And again, this is something that will be available to you guys after the webinar, so you can look at it in more detail. We also have e-bike coverage coming soon that I just wanted to make sure, because I know I'm going to get a lot of questions about that. It's hopefully going to be in the next few months. They've already put it out basically to all the states. The underwriter has to make sure that the state-by-state laws are completely covered before we all start selling it, but that is going to happen. I don't have the exact details of what is covered. I think the only question is whether or not the battery will be covered, but I will make sure that once we have all those details, it'll be released to you guys. So that's really exciting because we all know that the e-bike industry is getting bigger and bigger. There is a ton of profit potential with this plan. This is actually stats from one of Spokes, Etc. locations. They sold 225 plans. Total cost to a customer was a little over 31 grand. Total cost to them was a little over 10 grand. So just in selling those plans in that one location, they made over $21,000, which is huge. And it's something that doesn't require inventory. So it's great to have as an additional offering to your customer. All right, so let's hear from the guys at Spokes. I'm going to start it off with Steve and have him take over and talk to you guys a little bit about what they do in their stores with KPP.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Let me know, Lacey, if I start to fade in and out.
Sure.
Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for joining. Looks like we've got quite a few people that are interested in KPP and selling extended warranties, which is actually great to see. I would have thought there might be a few more people on here for this as well, because this is definitely a big opportunity and a huge potential to add additional revenue to your bottom line. And like Lacey said a minute ago, one of the most important things that I think about, and one of the most important things to consider, is this is the only thing under your roof that has no carrying costs to it, and is, obviously not pure profit, but no carrying costs to it, and can generate some very big additional revenue within your stores, as long as you get behind it. That's the key thing. We've been selling the extended warranties. It started with Trek years ago. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. Maybe some of you even participated in that program probably about 10 years ago or so. And once that faded and went away, we tried to figure out, hey, what's another way we can actually have another stream of revenue coming in that has big potential. And we were very behind the Trek plan. We did very well with that as well. And then, of course, it folded, unfortunately. So we signed up with Bike Co-op. We've been a member for, how many years has that been now, Lacey? Probably about close to 10 years or so.
Yeah, it's close to 10. I was going to say 8 or 9.
Yeah, about 8 or 9, 10 years, somewhere around there. Warranty plans were one of the big things that kind of brought us on board. And, I understand everybody's apprehension with potentially offering it and getting your staff behind it. We kind of suffered the same thing in the very beginning when we started thinking about doing warranty plans. And a lot of our employees were a little concerned because maybe they don't buy them, maybe they don't believe in them. But when you go out there and you look at statistics and you look at how many people do buy extended warranties and what they buy them on, it really only makes sense that in our industry, we should be offering the same thing. If you go to Best Buy, if you go to Micro Center, any electronic store, any store that sells mechanical equipment, bikes are mechanical, they sell extended warranties. And there's big profit to be made in them. With these new prices, I might jump all over the place here a little bit because I'm not too scripted. I kind of wing this, but if somebody has a question, please chime in. But with these new pricing plans and everything through Aminta, our number one and number two most popular plans that we sell are for bikes that are under $1,000 retail, which I would probably go out on a limb and say that most of us that are probably on this call, that's where the bulk of our business is. Our average bike prices that we sell are probably less than $1,000. And the margin that you get on those plans is anywhere between 70 and about 80%, depending on how you price your plans. And we don't ever discount them. We don't ever give them away. Our staff is trained to present them and to present them with every customer that we have interaction with. And, the attachment rate on them is pretty high. Some stores are better than others, naturally, depending on the team that's there. But the amount of money to be made on these plans, when you're talking 70 to 80% profit margin, is huge. And again, when you have no carrying cost on something like this, I don't know why any shop would not want to, potentially entertain this and offer it as a tool, to your team. Again, customers love it. I think the average statistic is about 47 to 52% of people will buy extended warranties when they're offered extended warranties, depending on what the item may be. We're not quite there yet with our attachment rate, but some stores are close to that, depending on the volume that they do. And again, most of it is just a matter of kind of getting your team behind the presentation and making sure that you are offering it to every customer that's purchasing a bicycle. So we have a system for doing that. Roberto, who manages I like to say our flagship store, our original store, their store does the best with KPP, which is why we have both Roberto and Garrett on the call. The system is basically when you have a customer come in, you should always mention KPP in the beginning of your conversation, during your conversation, and you should mention it at the sales counter. There's a number of very inexpensive tools that you can buy yourself from a POP perspective that plants that seed around the store. And if you don't get the chance to mention it, a lot of customers will come up to you and ask you about it. My favorite, which I think there might be a slide presentation that
Yes.
Lacey has on it, are the counter mats, which you see there on the right and left hand side. Oh, I'm sorry, on the right hand side there. The counter mats are basically the last thing that you kind of point to at the sales counter when you're engaged in that transaction of bringing the customer up. And Roberto can go through the verbiage on that, but we basically just assume that everybody is going to buy a plan. We don't get into the semantics of what it covers and what it doesn't cover. We essentially say that it's an extension of the manufacturer's warranty, good for either 3 years or 5 years, depending on the plan that you purchase. And we can go over more of that in detail later on. And most people know what extended warranties cover. KPP basically covers everything except your tires and your brake pads for the most part. They even cover drivetrain replacements. You get, I think, Garrett, is it 2 drivetrain replacements? Okay. So 2 drivetrain replacements. Perfect. Thank you. 2 drivetrain replacements when you sell a plan to a customer. And, so it's an easy selling point. I mean, the price of a plan easily covers the cost of most chain and cassette replacements on the bikes. And that's kind of how we have our plans priced out, is to make sure we're covered in that aspect. One of the fears I know from some dealers is, what do you do in the case of a plan that doesn't get, or a claim that doesn't get covered? And I can tell you that out of all the plans that we sell, it hardly ever comes up to where a claim doesn't get covered. I am of the mindset that if I have to eat a couple plans a year, a handful of plans a year, I don't really care. I mean, the amount of money that you make on them when you sell them just completely offsets, any sort of unclaimed or unhonored claim that you may have. And again, I couldn't even tell you how many of those we had last year because it's not even on the radar. There was probably less than 5, and that's, out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plans that are sold. So that fear, I know is one, from some of the dealers, which again, I just wouldn't even really, be too concerned about that. Some of the other fears that people have or concerns is how you present it, which, I'll let Roberto kind of go over that part of it. How the process works for doing your claims. And, there's a system for all of it. And once you start doing it, and you have dedicated people that deal with that, it's easy. And, it's not even anything that we even, have issues with, anymore. And, payment is quick. We're set up on ACH. So when we do our claims, I have it set up to where once a week, any claim that we have, I'm sorry, not claim, on the paid plan. So when we sell our plans to the consumer, we pay for our plans to Amenta once a week on Thursdays, and we do it through an ACH payment. So when you go through the registration process, which is very straightforward, you click an ACH button, and basically everything's just deducted from our account once a week, which I think you can do actually once a month as well. So we just do once a week, so it's easier to kind of keep track of it. Lacey, am I missing some points here? I'm kind of just talking at this point.
I don't think so. I think, the other points we can probably go over with some of the more specific questions. And you can chime in too if we want to pass it over to Garrett. And then if you think of other things, you can absolutely chime in along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say one thing that I've always thought of too with selling extended warranties. It's another one of those tools that kind of ties that customer to your store. Even though if they moved out of the area and they had a KPP plan, they could go to any participating dealer and still have it honored. That's not an issue. But when you sell that to a customer, it's kind of like maybe you do free service. We do free service for the first year, when we sell a bike. So naturally that brings them back. But when you sell them that extended warranty, that kind of attaches them to you as well. So it's symbolic with getting them back into your store again. And we all know that that's the biggest challenge, is trying to retain customers. And that's a very easy way to do it. And you make great money doing it as well. So yeah, Lacey, if you want to go on to some of the more specific stuff, we can kind of do that as well, if anybody has any questions or anything.
Sure. Let's hear from Garrett and Roberto first, and then we'll go into some of the more specific questions.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Lacey. Thank you for having us. I know every shop is super busy, so I'm going to kind of get down to brass tacks and make it kind of quick, but please let us know if you have any questions. Steve, you said something, you used the word tool, and I think KPP is one of the best tools that we have to use. As a mechanic, first and foremost, if there's ever a tool that can make my job easier, I need that tool in my arsenal. I need that tool on my tool bench, and KPP is one of those tools. One of the best parts about KPP is it gives us a little bit more opportunity to take care of the customer. When they come in, if they have a bad experience, a chain breaks, spoke breaks, anything like that, that brings them into the store, they are in your store because they have a bad experience. If they have that KPP, it's the easiest conversation ever. It's no problem, let me get you taken care of. And I think that is the most beneficial thing that comes out of this whole plan. Steve and Roberto will talk to you about sales numbers and how much profit it brings. But for me, on the service side, it's about taking care of the customer. And this gives us a better opportunity to do that. And like he was mentioning, if a claim were ever to get denied, which rarely happens, you now have much more profit built into it that you can, again, just say, no problem, we'll take care of it. If a plan gets denied, we're happy to eat it because it's taking care of that customer. So that's, for me, that's been the most critical thing. Getting your service writers, your service mechanics, your technicians, your service manager, it is most critical to get them on board because they deal with everything afterwards. After that plan is sold, it's all on them to continue to harbor those relationships, take care of the customer. So I feel like the most important part is getting your service team on board. Once they're on board, they'll push the salespeople to do better. The salespeople are stoked to tell you that they sold a plan, and it becomes this kind of like snowball effect of just selling more and more, and it's better for everybody. So we're wholeheartedly behind it, and like I said, the best part is it gives us that opportunity to take care of a customer better than we could if we didn't have this extended protection plan in place to, take care of those one-off type things or take care of a chain and cassette on the spot and keep them rolling on their bike. So that's what I've got.
Great. Thanks, Garrett. Really appreciate it.
Can I add something
Roberto,
to that, Lacey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say that, back in the service departments, I mean, typically it's the salespeople that are selling the plans, but Garrett, as a service manager, he's definitely sold more plans than any of our service staff. But a lot of times when we sell a bike, if the customer doesn't buy it initially at the counter, when they go back to pick their bike up from the service department, 20, 30 minutes later, however long it is these days, from getting it finalized and tuned up and all that and ready to go, the service staff will generally follow up with the customer and say, hey, did you end up getting the KPP plan? They'll basically bring it up again. And a lot of times we found that maybe the customer doesn't necessarily believe a salesperson so much, but they have more faith in their service department. So the service staff, they have the opportunity to sell the plan as well. So it's kind of something to keep in mind when you're trying to get your staff on board behind it. So that's all I wanted to say.
Cool. And we would address this later, but I figured I might just mention it now. You guys have a very specific incentive plan that goes along with that. Do you want to just touch on that briefly, Steve?
Yeah, we do. We basically incentivize the staff $10 for every plan that they sell. So it's regardless of what plan it is, what bracket it is, 3 years, 5 years, doesn't make a difference. We just do a straight $10. And what we do is we run a report quarterly, and we basically count them all up and figure out who gets what. and some of our staff is pocketing their monthly rent in their pocket quarterly when they do that. So it's
who was it that got the frame? It was one of you
That
guys.
was me,
Garrett
yeah,
yeah.
Roberto.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
bought a bike off of a plan.
Yeah, totally. Yep. So that's
Awesome.
what I would absolutely encourage you to do. There's so much margin built into these when I've never used the recommended prices even prior to this new transition with Amenta. We have always created our own price brackets and built in what we felt was a respectable price for the plan that we were selling based on the price of the bike. And very rarely do you have any kick. People either buy them or they don't. It's generally not the price that keeps them from buying it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Roberto, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again for hosting, having us here. Thanks everybody for coming in, trying to learn more about this plan. The more shops that we can get on board to kind of participate on this, the more we can all help each other out by just being able to cover customers from different parts of the country, on the sales side of things, selling the plan it's a great tool. Like Garrett and Steve keep saying, it's a great tool for us to be able to get a customer on the road with the bike, and the customer having that peace of mind that their bike will always or will be functional for either that 3 or 5 year period. It'll keep them coming in your door. It's I see nothing but benefits from the store. Like Steve was saying, there's almost no overhead to this. So, kind of the process that we have set up in our store when customers come in, we have the POP set up around the store. We make sure to mention it as soon as we can in the sales process. We have done a great job at training everybody and making them understand how beneficial the plan is. I actually have it on my own bikes just because, I am going to go through stuff on my bike that will need replacing. So yeah, we mention it to customers as soon as we can in the process. Once we kind of find a bike, we will go over the warranties on the different parts of the bikes and explain to them how the plan that we offer will ensure that even if the manufacturer of the bike doesn't cover a certain thing, we have the KPP to fall back onto to make sure that they are out riding their bike. We mention it as they're going out on a test ride, and then like Steve said, we have that countertop POP by the register. We had a really nice graphic one here at the store that actually outlined all of the parts that were covered on the bike. So as you were running the transaction, you could explain to the customer again what was covered, what wasn't. And then instead of really asking, it's kind of a tactic that we came down with, but instead of asking, hey, do you want this plan? We would ask them, do you want the 3 or the 5 year? Kind of eliminating an uncomfortable conversation that has already been had twice. But yeah, it's really the best thing that we offer other than the bikes, just because we can make a sale, and having a service department like the one we do here, where Garrett and Garrett's team is 100% behind the product and they understand the plan. It really helps us believe in it as well on the sales floor. And it kind of just trickles down. Everybody's kind of feeding off of this. It really incentivizes employees. I think our top performers here at the shop are close to 50% attachment rate. So we really do believe in it. And that's really what makes the biggest difference on the sales floor. Once your staff believes in it, it's like you're selling them a water bottle cage on their bike. It's something that should be on the bike. It becomes a process once you find kind of your script and how it works for your shop. It just becomes part of the process, and it's not even like you're offering it, you're just suggesting it 100%.
So Roberto, when you sell it, do you register the plan on the fly? Do you guys pull it up right there and register it as you sell it?
We used to do that, but Steve mentioned we were having some issues on the back end. So we moved away from that, and now we have a dedicated employee who will receive an email, the report on his email every Monday, and he just registers it once a week.
Once a week, got it.
We're
okay.
basically doing batch uploads, yeah.
Got it. And so when you explain it to the customer, you mentioned that you guys don't really get into the minutia of what is and what is not covered. But if I were asking you as a customer, well, what's covered, what would your answer be to me?
The one that I have found that basically just turns it from a maybe to a definitely is the 2 drivetrain overhauls. You know, 2 drivetrains. If you're out riding your bike, you get 2 whole new drivetrains. Basically, if anything breaks, you're covered.
So on the
brake
claim
levers,
side,
brake calipers, you know, that's all
right.
that, you know, suspension
Okay.
and full suspension mountain bikes or hardtail mountain bikes. Those are components that should be protected.
Right. And on the claim side, and on the service center side, when you guys have somebody come in, what's the process of the claim, and what's the process of taking the bike in?
But when the bike comes in, I check it at like any normal bicycle. At that point, the customer lets me know that they have the extended protection program, and if any of those parts were to need to be replaced, KPP has been so good to us that if it needs to get done, and I know it's part of the plan, I go ahead and take care of the customer and then put the claim in afterwards. Almost all of the claims, I would say 99% of the claims, are processed by me through the paperwork side, and I typically do it once a week.
Okay. And just so everybody is aware, when it comes to the claims, it is an online claim form that you would just have a link to through Member Center. If the claim is under $200, you do not have to call in to get an authorization. If it's over $200, you call in to get an authorization with some details on what the claim is covering. They give you that, and then you fill out the online claim form, just so you guys know the back end logistics of that. But it sounds like most of the claims tend to be under $200.
They do. And when you're filling out that paperwork, the first 1 or 2 times took me probably 10 minutes per claim. Now that I know what to expect, it's 3 to 4 minutes filling out the claims, part numbers, prices, and it's done. It's a very simple form that you fill out.
We actually have an Excel document now where we are copying and pasting part prices and part numbers, I believe, right? So just kind of streamlined it.
Right. And it's also, just so people know, it's $45 in labor for most claims. And then it's 25% markup on parts that you guys get back. And we also covered what happens when a claim is denied. I think that happens so rarely because everything is sent in through an online claim form. The only time that I ever see things getting denied is if, as simple as the math is just not done correctly. So the numbers of the parts don't add up to what is listed as the actual claim amount. I think through the new system that might not happen as much. And then we also covered incentivizing. The way you guys do it is you pay $10 per plan, which is great. And then we brought up in the sales cycle, it's you have 3 times, right? It's at the beginning, in the middle, and then when people are checking out.
Sometimes even 4 when the service, if a mechanic is handing over the bike to the customer, then they have the opportunity to make the sale as well, which actually happens quite a few times here as well.
Okay.
One other thing on that as well, Lacey. The other thing we do too, as far as asking for the KPP sale, is if a customer doesn't buy it at the time of purchase, we have automated emails that are set up. So 3 days after you purchase your bike, you get an automated email that basically says, "Thank you for purchasing your bike. We realize you didn't buy a plan. Click here for more info," yada, yada, yada. So there's follow through on that end of it as well. So it kind of puts it in front of the customer, one more time, which is nice.
Great.
We're also giving them a grace period in between the purchase date. We give them a bit of a grace period to kind of think about it, mull it over, and then they can come back to us.
I noticed you guys have that on your website as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And actually, if I could add one more thing before I lose my train of thought, I find it seems like every year in our industry, it's getting more challenging to maintain your margin. This past year, I think we all got lucky because we didn't have to put anything on sale, which was fantastic. And we're probably not going to have to do that for the next year or so, at least until they start doing promos again. But when you're struggling every year to try to maintain margin, and let's face it, your costs go up to operate your business regardless, with rent and payroll and everything else. I just always view this as such an easy way to gain back margin dollars, add additional margin dollars, revenue to the bottom line that you're losing from the margin on bikes every year. And, costs went up multiple times this year, so we had to adjust for that, so we probably got dinged a little bit here and there. And, there's no investment. If you want to pick up a new bike line or a new product line, you're doing a buy-in. You've got an upfront expense, an upfront investment to carry that item, carry that product. There's no investment to this. So for one, it doesn't cost you really anything to try it. However, if you're going to try it, just get your team behind it. Come up with that plan of how you want to attack it. I would highly encourage you to do, the 3 POP items that you see on the screen there. They're effective. People see them, they ask questions about them, and kind of tell us the story. And
you also
really
on your this is how you present it on your website for everybody to see. If you can all go to spokesetcetera.com, and they present it extremely well on their website. So this is another great way.
And that is a link I send to customers. I direct link them. When I email them their receipt, I add the link to the Keep It Rolling protection plan, just so they have access to that. As soon as they open up their receipt, they're also seeing the Keep It Rolling protection plan.
Great. And they also have their cost of the plan on their website as well. So this is just if people are perusing and on your website, seeing what bikes you have available, this is what you guys have. And then this is another great thing to show as well, is so people have an idea of common repairs. I think you guys were going to update this. I'm not sure if this is totally updated at this point, but it's
not yet. We have a new site about to launch. So
okay. So when you click register now, if somebody purchased a bike in the past 2 weeks, they would be able to check this out and then be able to buy KPP again, which is another really great tool that you guys have that I haven't seen other retailers use this. And I would highly recommend, as a retailer, checking out their website. I direct a lot of retailers to your website.
Thank you. It's going to look a lot better actually in about another week.
Oh, great.
It's getting a little dated.
A little lift. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to go over what we haven't already with some of the common questions and pushback that I've gotten doing this for 11 years. So the first one that I've heard is my staff just isn't willing to sell it. Steve, at the beginning of the call, you mentioned that it was a little difficult to get everyone on board. And I think it's just like financing, where it has to become part of the culture. So if you want to speak a little bit more on that, how you guys were able to get that to happen, especially across all the locations that you have.
Yeah. Oh, as far as getting the staff behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely always the toughest part. And the hardest part is trying to get the staff to understand that you actually are selling a very valuable item to the customer, because some of those customers are absolutely going to take advantage of it, especially commuters, and they're more than going to get their money's worth out of that plan. And I always try to explain to them, hey, no matter where you go, whether you're buying a car or a TV or whatever it may be, you're always offered an extended warranty, because for one, for us, there's great margin in it, but two, customers like peace of mind. And it's regardless of how we view it, whether we think it's worth it or not. We actually do think it's worth it, because those drivetrain replacements are expensive and they're covered under those plans. Now, with that said, there's not very many people that are going to come back in as a percentage and actually have to make a claim on this stuff. So, that's the biggest challenge, is getting everybody to kind of come on board with that and understand it from the consumer's perspective, that you are giving them something that's valuable, that they can actually utilize in the future if they ride their bike enough, or if they just have a mishap. But the other part of it with getting them behind it is incentivizing them. And I know some retailers in the past, we got pretty aggressive with, I feel it's pretty aggressive with $10 per plan. A lot of other retailers were doing $3 and $5. And I said, no, let's do 10. There's good margin in it. And I remember when I was working at the store level, in fact, at Quaker Lane, with Garrett, Roberto is better than me. He's a better manager over there. So. But when I was at the store level, one of the things you always get confronted with your employees is, hey, can I get a raise? Can I get a raise? I need more money. And I used to tell them on the weekends, especially, it's like, hey, you want to give yourself a $1 an hour raise? You want to give yourself a $2 an hour raise? Go sell 2 plans today. That's all you need to do is go sell 2 plans. You're going to sell however many bikes you sell. Sell 2 plans. You just gave yourself a $2 an hour raise. So it's an easy way to get people. Money's an easy way, in my opinion, to get people motivated. And if you incentivize them, that kind of takes a lot of the kickback, right off the table there. So
I think another big pushback comes to the logistics of registering plans. I've heard that they just don't have time to go through and register the plans on top of everything else that you have to do when it comes to selling bikes.
Yeah, you come down with a system for it. Like Roberto said, they have a designated person that's doing it. And what I usually do on a weekly level is I get a report pulled out of a send for those who may be on a send. Maybe your system has the capability of doing it if you're not on a send. But I get a report every week on Sunday night that says, hey, here's how many plans were sold. And I just forward them directly over to the stores and say, hey, here's your reminder. Basically just go through this list and double check that everything has been registered. So, it's not a lot of time when you look at the money that you actually gain from it. So,
and if I can interject, if just like Garrett said on the claim side of things, once you find a way of doing it on the registration as well, it becomes quick. I don't know. I think on average, we're probably registering 15 plans a week or so, and they're done at probably like 2 minutes per claim. It's like 2 minutes per claim, so like a 30-minute total. It is extremely easy, streamlined.
I think one of the big things to point out also, just from my perspective, seeing retailers who dabble versus you guys, it's better not to dabble. If you're just going to do that, you're better off not selling it, because at the time when it comes to the claim, you're not going to be used to filing claims. Your staff isn't going to be used to it either. So it's going to be more of a pain in the butt than anything else. And it's not going to be worth the money that you might have made by selling that one claim a month or one plan a month. So if you're going to do this, it's like I've been saying, everybody, same thing with financing. You want to go all in. And part of that is training the staff and making sure that they are trying to sell it on every single bike. This is not to be sold only on high-end bikes. This is, like Steve said, your bread and butter bikes. All of those should be sold with that plan. The last one that I'll ask you guys is, we're already offering an extended protection plan. Why should we switch? And I think, Steve, when I presented this to you, you had a good answer for that.
Oh yeah, it's more money.
Right.
it's pretty simple. I mean, the margins are just a lot higher. Again, especially with the way it's set up now. I mean, the margin difference. I mean, it was great before, but the margin difference now between, especially on those bikes under $1,500 is $1,500 retail is huge. So I looked at some of the other stuff that was out there, like Velo Care and some of the others, but it's just more profit in this, and it's easy. I mean, it's like Roberto and Garrett said. I mean, basically everything's covered except for your tires and your brake pads, your wear and tear. I mean, typically people would argue, well, your drivetrain's wear and tear, but they specifically say they cover 2 drivetrain replacements. So that right there takes most of the confusion right off the table there, and it's simple, it's straightforward, and there's good margin in KPP. So
Right.
We're happy selling it. I'm not interested in trying to offer anything else.
Awesome. So at this point, I'm just going to open it up to the chat. I think I covered one of the questions. But if you guys have a question, if you would prefer not to type it, and if you just want to ask it yourself, let me know and I can unmute you. And I'll just leave a few seconds for that if you guys have anything. Also, Steve has very willingly made himself available to everybody. If you have questions on anything after this, he's a great resource if you guys have specific questions.
You can email or call, either way. Is anybody on here already offering extended warranties?
We have a new sign up, but I do not believe we have any current offerings. I'm not sure who I'm not sure who a couple of these people are. but for the most part,
or
it's
they
new
tried it.
signups. I think in the past, we've had retailers who tried, and again, it's a dabble situation. And then they
Yeah.
just stop doing it because it's too much of a pain. And at this point, this is one of the reasons for the webinar. I'm really hoping to relaunch because, as you guys can see, it's very profitable. And Brett's out in California, and e-bikes are going to be covered in the next few months, and I'll let you guys know about that. We did request that they rewrite basically everything to include e-bikes. So they're just doing the underwriting process for every state, and as you can imagine, that takes time. They don't like to make things easy when it comes to that.
Are e-bikes going to have their own separate pricing structure? Do you know?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be included in that, but I can double check.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, that'll be very exciting. We'll put a big announcement out for that when it happens. Does anybody else have questions? Or did you guys have any of the guys from Spokes or Matt? Matt, you're out there. Do you have anything you want to add?
So the one thing that I was just going to add is, all the stuff that Steve and Garrett and Roberto went over, obviously Spokes has figured out their way of doing stuff. They've gone through it, they've gone through the process, and they know what works for them. So they have laid the groundwork to kind of share with the co-op what works for them to be successful. But that's not to say that any new retailer that signs up with KPP might find their own processes that work best for them. So I think the name of the game is really just kind of try it, stick with it, and once you get through the growing pains, just like implementing any new program, you're going to find out what works best for that specific retailer in general. So, I really liked what Steve said, that just try it and see how well it works for you. And then, Lacey, it looks like Brad had another question before the e-bike question too.
That cover annual services. I have not seen that. No, KPP does not do that.
And we don't have anything like that in place either, but we're entertaining coming up with our own.
Now, just going off of what Matt was just saying, where you have to kind of just go at it and keep doing it until it works for you. I'm a fairly new hire here at Spokes compared to some other people. And when I first started working here, I had to kind of learn the market and find my way of pitching it. I have coworkers who pitch it completely different. What really, really helps is just having a staff that as a whole believes in the plan. So,
right.
And then just learn your market and learn how to pitch it.
Chad, I'm going to open it up to you in 1 second. I do have one question from Brett again, and this maybe could go to Roberto or Garrett on a more specific question. How does it work if there's a brake issue? Does KPP nitpick how to do the repair, or do you just replace the whole component?
If you don't mind, I'll take this one.
Sure.
The best way I've found to do it is take care of that customer however you see fit. If you are writing up that repair like normal, that is how I take care of it for KPP. So not to get too nitty gritty, but say the cable is kinked inside the housing and all you need to do is replace the cable and housing to get it taken care of, go ahead and do that. If you feel like it is a sticking piston and you can replace just the caliper, but there might be an issue within the rest of that hydraulic system, replace that whole brake. It's about taking care of that customer. And every time that we've done that, KPP.
I think we lost you, Garrett.
Yeah, I think you just froze a little bit. I think they're having some internet issues on the roof, right? Hopefully that was. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the Pentagon's right down the street, so maybe they're wondering what he's doing up on the roof.
Yeah. Yes. They're removing his cell service. If he can, hopefully that answers your question for the most part, Brett. But
I can add something to that too, Lacey, real quick.
Sure.
I was just going to say that the other thing to keep in mind too is when you submit these claims. Yeah, when you submit your claim, you're submitting a claim to Aminta's a massive company. So when they're honoring these claims, they generally don't nitpick these because they're right after your claim, they're probably processing the claim on a dishwasher or a television, or something else. They don't generally get into the nitty gritty on that stuff.
Okay, I'm going to open it up it looks like Brett wants to get a little bit more details on that. So I'm going to unmute Brett and then he can just ask his question. So go ahead, Brett.
Hey guys, thank you.
Hey, Brett.
So my example, I mean, we have a lot of issues with hydraulic brakes, just in general, and they're usually warranty issues of one sort or another, and they're complicated. It can be a caliper, it could be a kink in the line, it could be the brake, like the mounts aren't faced properly. So, we would love to just throw the book at it, face the brake mounts, put a whole new brake set, and just that's the most straightforward way to just solve the problem. But I'm just wondering, through KPP, if we wrote up a ticket where we're facing the mounts and we're installing new brakes and we submit that, are they going to say, you're charging us installation, you're charging us for the part, and you're charging us for, brake facing? Is there something weird here going on?
Since Garrett's, I guess do we lose Garrett?
Yeah, both our phones overheated, but we're here on my phone, so I can probably get Garrett to answer that question.
What do y'all have for phones? Flip phones or something?
We got iPhones, but we've been sitting in the sun for an hour, so. So if we could quickly recap, I caught the brake facing.
So I mean, we're in San Francisco, so we have a whole lot of, and we sell e-bikes. So people are going doing crazy things on their bikes. And so the best way to do a repair would be to just replace the whole brake, face the brake. So that service ticket would be facing the frame, potentially installing the brake, and the part of the whole brake system. Is that going to fly with KPP?
Yeah, so the way that would be processed is that would be a brake install. They give you $45 labor regardless of what that repair is. So if you're facing the fork, you normally charge, let's call it $50 to face the fork and $35 to install that brake. Your labor charge on that is $45. And then 25% markup on that brake. And they would just, if you think that's the best way to process that claim, you think that's the best way to take care of your customer, then they take care of you.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to open it up to Chad. I think, Roberto, I think you guys have a little bit of a echo, or if you want to mute yourself.
Yep.
Always throws me off when I can hear myself. Okay, I'm going to open it up to Chad, if Chad's still on. Here we go. All right, Chad, go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for having us. I'm sitting here with my my general manager Scotty and stuff. I think you guys did a really great job on explaining how to sell it to a customer. But as an owner and a shop manager, can you explain a little bit more in detail how all this margin is made?
Sure. So just keeping it kind of simple, from the actual margin perspective, the prices that you see like on our website, if you take into consideration what the actual cost is on the plans themselves, that's the margin that I speak of.
So how much are the cost of the plans and stuff?
So that's something I can send out to you. I do have a slide. Yeah. It's hard to compare because there's lots and lots of tiers. But it's really like the money you make is up to you. So the pricing that they have is right here. So for any one of these, you can mark it up as you see fit. So what Steve was saying, you said you do 70, 80% on all of these?
No. So definitely good question, Chad.
I think you understand the question I'm trying to understand. Sure. I mean, I understand how we can sell the shit out of anything. It's just on the administrative side of things, like how does all of this work? Because it sounds super interesting.
Well, I mean, are you talking like down to the whole like item creation aspect, how you physically sell it on a ticket, that sort of thing, or just?
I mean, or here, you got your cost, you got your retail, and then it sounds like, is there flat? And this could be a conversation that you and I have offline instead of involving.
But go ahead.
So you're paying what, $45 labor is the maximum amount that they'll cover?
Yeah. So that is a separate subject in itself as far as like the actual claim part of it and the repair part of it. When I'm speaking of the margin, I'm literally solely referring to the selling of the plans themselves. Gotcha. And what the cost is. Now, to elaborate a little bit on it, we take way less of a margin on the upper end bikes because they just don't occupy as much of the percentage of the sales. On the lower end bikes, the stuff that's generally under $1,500 or so, which is, really where most of the bread and butter is, at least for us. That's where we have really high margins built into those plans. And our number one selling plan is the $500 to $750 price bracket, and then the $750 to $1,000 price bracket. So collectively, each of those plans generates roughly between 300 to 400 plan sales. And we build anywhere from a low 70 to a high 70 point margin into those plans. And then, of course, you have to back out your $10 per plan that you sell as well. So that's not taking that into consideration. But again, you know how it is. I mean, how many items in your store can you come up with that have that sort of margin built into them that you don't have to invest any money into? You pay for them as you sell them. So it's easy. I mean, when you're doing, are you, how many stores do you guys have? Are you a single location or one store? Well, if you just think about the amount of bikes that you sell, and Quaker Lane is our biggest store by volume and by units of bikes sold. And like Roberto said, he's got some staff members that are close to 50% attachment rate, at his store. Now there's some that aren't nearly that high, and obviously, we need to work with them as well. But when you start looking at how many bikes you're selling, and if you can get your attachment rate up to 15%, and think about the extra revenue that it tosses in the till. I mean, it's pretty easily worth it. But that's kind of where I talk about margin, is basically what we sell the plans at and what they actually cost us. So the labor part of it is totally separate.
Going off of that 15% goal that Steve just referred to, we as a store, we push and try to incentivize our staff or just motivate them basically to have a 25% attachment rate or
I think we
below it, but we're just setting ourselves up for success. Exactly, just by creating goals for the staff that they have to go after.
Right. So having expectations for the staff is really key.
And in these attachment rates that we're referencing right now, or even during the COVID times where it was a lot harder because people kind of wanted to just come in, or not come in, bring it outside to my car. So it was very quick engagement with people over the last, not so much right now. Things are fairly normalized for us here. But in the beginning, the first, 6 months of last year, it was a totally different environment, and you just did not have quite the same opportunity to spend with people. That's when we got into doing like the follow-up emails and saying, hey, if you didn't purchase one, consider purchasing one. So it's all those avenues that you can reach out to people with.
If you don't mind, I'd like to interject and kind of go back to the question real quick, and I just want to make sure that we're answering the question. Are you asking about the opportunity basically when writing service? Is that what your question was?
Chad? Yeah.
Because you mentioned the $45 and that's all you get for labor.
Oh, no, there, I'm unmuted now. So I guess our whole question is I'm looking at that. You guys are selling a $500 plan for how much?
I have to go back to it on the website.
What does the customer pay for that 5-year plan?
So $500 for a 5-year plan. We pay $28.64 according to that slide.
Yep, and then you guys sell it for
how much?
$499.99. No, sorry. Steve, you've got that.
Yeah, hey, Titan, I'm actually just going directly to the website. So the five.
And if you want, I can do a side-by-side comparison. So I can.
Yeah,
So
I believe
it'll
that
be
plan is
easier to
like
show.
$70-$80 or so.
A 5-year plan. Did you say a 5-year plan? A 5-year plan is
120, 130-ish. Okay.
140.
For the
Yes,
$500 bike?
Correct. Yeah. And it's $90 for a 3-year plan. Yeah, 90 for 3-year.
And that includes 2 driveline replacements?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not
So
only
again,
drivetrain, but brake levers, brake calipers. If it's a disc brake bike, it'll cover the rotors. There's nothing but benefits to it.
Pivots on suspension?
Suspension, if the bike has suspension, yes, sir.
keep in mind, most of those $500 to $750 bikes, you're generally not getting too many people that actually need drivetrain replacements.
Yep.
So it's very, very rare.
And I think one of the big things is not to overthink this, right? Like it's all about selling. So when you start getting into the minutia on the claim side, then that's what I think is what halts people from doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good concern, because I mean we went through the same thing as far as trying to figure out is it worth it, is it not worth it. But I think I think I said in the very beginning, it's like the amount of claims that we end up doing relative to the plans that we sell and the money that they generate and keeping people coming back in the store. We don't really take concern into the claims anymore. And I think, like I said, last year we could probably count on one hand how many claims with 6 stores, that didn't get honored. So it's very, very infrequent.
And I think the last thing, Brett, you had said, I'm interested in the opportunity on the service side. I can see you on video. Just give me a thumbs up if you want me to unmute you again. Okay. Quick question. All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
specifically, Garrett, I'm just interested in, I mean, do you see this as an opportunity to make money on the service side too, besides just what the initial selling of the plan is?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, our labor rate is normally $100, and we mark parts up 50%. So,
yep. So our normal labor rate's $120 an hour, and what the plan really is covering, it's just parts and parts replacement, right? So your customers are coming in most of the time for a tune-up. They tell you they need a tune-up, right? And during that check-in process, you realize that they need a new chain and cassette in order to make that tune-up proper. You're still going to charge them that $120 for the tune-up, but now it covers parts and parts replacement. So it's going to cover that chain and cassette, and it's going to cover the labor to install that. And it's $45 labor for that chain and cassette.
Okay, so even if the chain is just worn, it said, I see on your website it says wear and tear not covered. So if it's just a worn chain, you would still run it through the KPP?
If you believe that it needs to be replaced for that tune-up to operate properly, then absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And the beauty is, I mean, the reality of what people bring in is a broken chain and cassette that need to be replaced. Every once in a while, you'll get something weird like a brake with a sticky piston, all that kind of stuff. And what the plan is it's covering the part and the labor to install that part. And you don't have to have
Garrett's breaking up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, he's breaking up.
That's okay. We can continue the conversation afterwards. If you guys have more specific questions, I think definitely send it along, and we can, they'll be happy to answer them. Did you want to add something else, Steve? Sure.
Yeah, I was just this is to Brett, his question just a minute ago, and I completely hear his point of view on that and where he's coming from. Because we had a little bit of an issue in the beginning with a couple of the service managers basically saying, well, should I really list this as a part that should be covered, because it's worn out, it's really not defective. I'm like, well, the language in the actual plan coverage is that it covers 2 drivetrain replacements. And the whole thing behind this, and this is where it gets back to like getting behind it and pushing it and trying to do some volume with it to where it makes you money, is that if Aminta does not get down, like we said earlier, to the nitty gritty on all this stuff, don't abuse it. Be honest about it. And if you're selling a lot of plans, they're not going to question the occasional claim that you run through, regardless really of what that claim is. I mean, we have a claim question once in a blue moon if it's within like the first year and they say, hey, you should be going after the manufacturer for this. And it's like, well, the manufacturer's not going to cover the chain and cassette. It's like, all right, we'll resubmit it again. And, in a lot of those cases, they end up just paying them out for us. Mm-hmm. So, but I understand where Brett's coming from on that, because you have to get your staff behind it and get them to understand that you're not, it's not like you're screwing a Minta, or anything like that. You're selling a lot of the plans. And
the one other thing that I just think about is we do, our customers are using bikes extremely heavily. Most bikes come in with that, our average customer probably puts 1,000 to 2,000 miles a year on their bike. So we do a whole lot of service. I mean, we're replacing drivetrains for customers, twice a year, in some instances, but at least once a year. So it won't be like an occasional thing. It'll be a lot. And so it's sort of calibrating and understanding how we should think about this calibration of our service department with this new tool, which I think would be really amazing. But I also think that we've got power users over here.
And if those drivetrains are no longer performing at industry standard, they will be covered. They're going to get replaced.
At least, twice.
2 of them, exactly.
Yeah, 2 of them.
And Brett, to your point, I mean, we're in the Washington, D.C. area. Our shop here is about 4.5 miles from D.C. We have heavy commuters from the Alexandria into DC, all the time, daily, right? So if you're talking, 10 miles a day, 5 days a week, 50 miles a week, 200 a month, I mean, you see the math, it adds up pretty quick. We have that also heavy use, and the customers that are buying it, most of them understand that they use their bike and they're going to need it. And you have now a tool to be like, no problem, I got you.
And the other thing too, you can analyze it and figure out whether you think it may potentially be worth entertaining and get people behind it and start selling it. And if for some reason you think that it's not working for you, it's not like you just made a huge investment in a model of bike that you're sitting on that now you have to unload and get rid of. But I hear you, man. We had service managers and staff and even some of us who kind of thought about that stuff in the beginning. And anything like this, I think we all tend to kind of maybe overthink it just a little bit, because at the end of the day, we're always thinking of our worst case scenarios, and generally our worst case scenarios really aren't that often, and we deal with those worst case scenarios from time to time when something doesn't get honored, we eat it, or whatever the case may be. And we just kind of go on. We just we tend to not overthink it and just push it and really sell it, so.
Great. I think we're done with the questions. It doesn't look like anything else is coming through on chat. So I really appreciate all of you guys from Spokes, Etc. being able to do this today and taking the time out of your day to hop on and prep for the call and be on there. And Garrett and Roberto, I appreciate you being out on the roof and and being able to answer some questions despite your phones overheating and all that fun stuff. And to all the retailers on there, if you guys want to sign up, just let me know and I'll send you the sign up forms. The process is relatively easy. And then as soon as you're approved, basically they just walk through some training on how to use their back end system, and then you can start selling the plan right away. And then again, there's brochures that you can print out also as well to give to those customers that you should be able to order through their website very, very soon. But for now, they're available just in a PDF form. And, we're going to do as much as we can to help you guys stay successful with it. So I think having, routine webinars to talk about best practices, things like that will help. But any questions, please let me know. And I can also send out Steve's contact information. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Lacey, if anybody wants, I'm more than happy to share like the files that we did for the poster creations and the counter mats and everything. I'm more than happy to send people those files. You'll have to open them up and edit, don't use our logo, but put your logo on there. And then, you got some free artwork you can use for posters and counter mats and stuff.
Awesome. Really appreciate that, Steve. And that'll be something I can ask our marketing department to maybe provide a file. Well, all you have to do is stick on your logo and then you're good to go. So that would
that'd be
that
nice.
would be good to have in Member Center. Again, thank you everybody so much for joining today. I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon. It's very nice weather here today in Vermont, so hopefully everybody's getting some sun. And I look forward to seeing you guys and talking to everybody in the future.
Thanks, Lacey.
Yeah, thanks, Lacey.
Bye, guys.
All right, Garrett, Roberta. See you.
Yeah,
See you,
take care.
See you, Chad. See you, Brett.